Welcome back, everybody. Today, we are taking a look at some of the biggest fallers in Dynasty post 2025 season. And if these are some values that you need to be scooping, or are they players that you should be probably trying to get out from underneath and before they lose any more value. I'm currently recording this the day after the NFC Championship game, so we now have our Super Bowl matchup set between the Seahawks and the Patriots. Not a ton of change can go from here, so I thought it was a great time to make this. Unless we see someone like what happened to Zach Charbonnet, someone tear an ACL, a really significant injury. I don't think a lot changes. So it was a perfect time to make this, in my opinion. It's a little early in the offseason, but there's never a bad time to capitalize on all this value and value going into the 2026 season. So with that being said, let's get right into our first player for today. The first guy we're going to talk about today is the one and only Lamar Jackson. And how far have we fallen with him? Kind of not really. I mean, let me explain here. I mean, his value on keep to cut is pretty significant compared to where it was. Back in September, he was ranked as the number one overall player. He is now currently the keep trade cuts quarterback 4. He's going as the 110 as the quarterback 4 in startups per Dynasty Data Lab. And he's my quarterback 4 just behind Josh Allen, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. So not the biggest follow-up but a follow-up nonetheless from, at the top of the mountain where he was. My biggest question mark, though, what is the outlook for him going forward? And are we buying? Are we selling? Are we holding? Honestly, though, I struggled with this one. This one was the one I had so much trouble with out of all the guys in this video. Because when you think about it holistically, right? I mean, he's an easy buy. It's Lamar Jackson. He's a 2-time MVP. Probably going to go down as one of the best, if not the best fantasy player of all time. Maybe the most ridiculous season we've ever seen. Back when he won his first MVP, he averaged, I think, 29 points per game. He's always had a high ceiling in fantasy, but, we haven't seen a ceiling from him at the quarterback position probably ever. We may never will again. But, however, I just think things have changed for him, for the Ravens. Everything going forward from just a season ago back in 2024 and 2025 changed everything, especially when we're looking at things going into 2026. Just to quickly gloss over Lamar Jackson's 2025 season, we'll do it quickly because I know it's kind of painful to think about, but Lamar finished as the quarterback 16 in points per game with 16 and a half. He was easily, if not the most frustrating fantasy asset all year long. I mean, we don't have to rehash any of it. Dude killed a lot of teams in fantasy this year, especially at the end of the season. I mean, my biggest red flag, though, that I think that goes overlooked is the lack of rushing he provided. He only averaged around 27 rushing yards per game. This concerns me a lot, especially when we look back and see what he has done like the past 3 seasons. He was averaged 54, 51, and 64 rushing yards per game, a very, very steep drop off, and one that would make sense if you look at his age. To be honest, he's going to be 29, or I believe he is 29. He's going to be going on 30. And while that isn't exactly hitting young status, he is not the youngest guy in the room, especially at the quarterback position. It could actually absolutely be a combination, though. I understand it. People want to push back of the multitude of injuries that he sustained this past season. He was banged up a lot of the year. He had a knee injury that kept him out quite a while. Then he had a back injury at the end of the year, at the tail end of the season. And we all know injury is always a risk when you're talking about a guy who scrambles as much as Lamar. We see it every single year. We know it's a risk. But my biggest fear is that his days of being an elite rusher of the football are just dwindling, if not gone completely. I don't think they're going to be gone completely, but like a guy who consistently rushes for between 700 and 900 yards a season, I don't believe Lamar has finished with less than 70 yards since his rookie season. I don't even think he played a full year that year, so that's pretty crazy. I guess even if he is just around the 400 to 500 yard mark, that's still great. It's still probably more than most of the league, except for maybe a guy like Josh Allen. He has set quite a good floor for himself, even if he does take a step back as a rusher. I do think I'm correct about this, and if he decides to limit the amount that he runs the ball to conserve his body, we will not see the crazy fantasy ceiling that we have seen in the past from Lamar Jackson. Like, those days would be completely over, especially a new coaching staff coming in. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I just don't think they're going to want Lamar to take hits. They want to save their job. They want Lamar to stay healthy. And that is the number one factor in them saving their job and winning games. If Lamar taking care of his body, Lamar staying on the field, it could really limit the amount that he runs. And I love Lamar as a passer and the steps that he has taken in his career. But the whole part about being Lamar, the whole part of Lamar being an elite fantasy asset is the massive upside as a rusher. I am just not sure he gets back to exactly where he was. And to put it frankly, this is the long-winded version of it. But what I'm really trying to say here is I think Lamar Jackson is more of a sell in Dynasty around now than he is a buy. And it may be smart to sell him maybe a little bit later when we get closer to the season as the hype kind of builds up. We still don't know who the head coach of the Ravens will be. So that's also a risk. Who will be calling plays for them? Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens over the past 3 seasons, he followed John Harbaugh over to the Giants. We'll talk about him a little bit here in a second here as well. I just have a lot of worries about what happened in 2025 in the state of the Ravens at the moment, the age, the rushing decline is something that really, really, really worries me. I could absolutely just be overreacting. If you are someone who feels like Lamar's spy, have at it. I wouldn't push back too much. I just, in my opinion, I think he's a sell because, you know, I don't know. It just we have a lot of data to suggest maybe that it was a fluke based off the injuries and the state of the Ravens, like I mentioned. But if you can capitalize, I just think at the moment, if you can capitalize on his value still being a top 4 to 5 dynasty quarterback, then I'm doing it. I absolutely doing it. Why would I not try to capitalize on moving from Lamar over to a guy like Jaden Daniels? You can absolutely do that. You can absolutely get that done. His value has decreased, and in terms of Jaden Daniels' value has decreased because of his injury-riddled sophomore season, and he is 45 years younger. He also showed that he has the type of Lamar ceiling that, during his rookie season when he ran for 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. I love that pivot. Can he make a move up to go get Drake May? I mean, made that probably not possible anymore because he's going to be playing in the Super Bowl and he may even win the Super Bowl, and that window might be gone. But why not try, right? I mean, why not move over to Jackson Dart and get a big plus on top? He has Lamar's ex-coach, who I think is a great head coach in the league. I know John Harbaugh has his flaws, but I think he's a good head coach. He's going to stabilize the Giants as a whole, and I think he's going to try to make them a contender, and he's at least going to just increase the floor of this team, and that increases Dart's floor and ceiling even more than it already did. We already saw the upside that Dart had as a rusher. He ran for 500 yards and 9 touchdowns in just 12 games on his rookie season. It may feel bad to pivot off a guy like Lamar because we have seen such consistency combined with the ceiling each and every year, no matter if he's hurt, no matter if he's healthy. We see it each and every year. I just think this year was a big red flag that his rushing production and the new coaching staff coming in is just going to limit all of that. And although he may be a good fantasy quarterback, he's not going to be that great fantasy quarterback and up there scoring 22, 23, 24, 25 points per game. Yeah, I just think it's better to get out earlier than later in these situations. And I know Dynasty, we play in 3-year windows. I totally get it. And Lamar could be really, really good for 3 more years. But I think there's a good chance that he hit that type of upside is gone this upcoming year. And it's going to surprise a lot of people. The pivots you can move are just far too good, and the window can close far too fast. So I'm getting out on Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, and I didn't think I'd be saying that, especially heading into the 2025 season after him coming off an MVP and just lighting up the league. I still think he's really, really good as a passer, and his floor is going to be pretty high. I think it's going to be at least 18, 19 points per game, which is a great quarterback. But if you can take a chance on a Dart, if you can get up to a May, if you can get to a Daniels, I'm absolutely doing it, and I'm taking advantage of where Lamar Jackson is right now before he loses any more value. The next player we're going to talk about is A.J. Brown. Eagles wide receiver for the moment, I think. A lot of discourse around him this year, and honestly, every year that he's played in Philly, do him and Jalen Hurts get along? Will he be traded? Yada, 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 whatever. These are for sure some good questions, I'm going to be honest. Like, they really are. Every single year, I think it's right to question, is he going to be in Philly or is he going to be traded just because of how things seem to play out every offseason and every season, no matter if they win the Super Bowl or if they don't. I think people are already doing their fan fiction of what team can A.J. Brown end up on. What if he gets traded to the Patriots this offseason? They're coming off maybe a Super Bowl victory. Linking up with Drake May would be electric, of course. I mean, absolutely. How about the Bills? Josh Allen could use someone like him. Absolutely. Josh Allen could use literally anybody who can run routes, get open, and catch the ball. So many of these are great, but I will be completely honest with you. I think more than likely he's on the Eagles next season. I'm wrong a lot. I'm not saying there's a 0% chance of him being moved. I'm just saying financially for the Eagles, I don't think it'd make a ton of sense for them. Unless they're getting back a first-round pick, which at this point, I doubt any team is trading a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. As good as I think he is, the guy's 28. He's going to turn 29 in a couple of months before the start of the season. And if the Eagles traded A.J. Brown before the June 1st deadline, they would be, I think, greater than $43 million. It would be like a greater than $43 million dead cap hit for them in 2026. In other words, to be honest, this means he would account for $43 million of their salary this next season. If they traded him after the June 1st deadline, he would cost the Eagles $43 million in dead cap, but it would be a split over the course of the next 2 seasons, which still isn't good. It's a hefty price to play for a player that you're just trying to get off your team and get away from your team. Plus, the most important thing here is, while A.J. Brown didn't play his best football in 2025, and he may have taken a slight step back, especially in the playoff game, he didn't show up in the biggest moment, I think, this year, and all year is kind of a theme for the Eagles. He is still a damn good player in one of the better positions and one of the better players at his position in the entire league. In my opinion, I'm just going to come out and say it. I think A.J. Brown's a great buy in Dynasty. Anywhere you can get him, his perceived value in terms of people, how they view him, couldn't get any lower right now. unless you're playing with just a bunch of sickos who think AJ Brown is just a phenomenal player, kind of like me, unless you're playing with 11 other me's, 10 other me's, I think he's a good buy in Dynasty, and you can get him for pretty good value. He is coming off one of his worst seasons in quite a while. And my case for Brown is pretty simple. I mean, the biggest issue for the Eagles was not AJ Brown in 2025. As much of a distraction as he was, he did steal all the headlines. A lot of the blame was put on him. But the biggest issue was the offensive coordinator that was put in place of Kellen Moore when he took the head coaching job this past season in New Orleans. And Jalen Hurts' limitations as a quarterback are real. Absolutely. One of those problems, though, has been eliminated. Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator that I'm referring to, was fired shortly after the Eagles season. The other problem being Jalen Hurts. It's still there, and let's be honest, he isn't going anywhere. They own too much money. He just coming off a Super Bowl MVP just season ago. I think Jalen Hurts is a good player. I do. I do think he has his limitations, but he's just not. They're not all of a sudden going to disappear. But I trust the Eagles organization to make a hire that will get the best out of him and the players around him. The Eagles have one of the best organizations in the entire NFL. They're so well run. I think that we've seen it in the past. They've had guys like Kellen Moore come in after Shane Steichen, after he got the job in Indianapolis. I think they're going to make the best hire this coming offseason. I've seen names like Mike McDaniel, who I think is going to take the job with the Chargers if he doesn't get a head coaching job. But Brian Daboll's been floated around, and I think either of those or another good offensive coordinator with a good track record could absolutely get things back on track for the Eagles in 2026. AJ Brown's value may not be able to get up around the 12 to 15 dynasty wide receivers ever again. Let's just be honest. He's kind of too old for that at this point, but those days are over. Age is the biggest reason, of course. The value jump is not something you should be expecting with AJ Brown. However, the main goal in your dynasty league is to win, and AJ Brown is absolutely and can absolutely help you do that over the next course of the next 2 to 3 years. He's finished as the wide receiver 11 in points per game at just below 15 points per game in his bad season, especially for his standards. He has been pretty much a 16 to 17 points per game scorer for most of his career. That is something that is incredibly valuable for your lineups. I look at players that are valued around him, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He is currently the wide receiver 23 in keep track cut, and although that's not far from where I have him, he is just one spot in front of Travis Hunter and ahead of others like Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Zay Flowers, who I like a lot, and Jordan Addison. What is stopping you from moving any of these players to go up and get A.J. Brown, especially if you're competing? You probably don't have to add too much or anything significant. I mean, if we have no clue if Travis Hunter is going to play wide receiver in 2026, I have my feelings on him. I think Travis Hunter is a darn good player, but maybe we don't see the full potential as him as a wide receiver in 2025 or 2026, excuse me. Devontae Smith is still the number 2 behind AJ Brown in Philly, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Jalen Waddle has Quinn Ewers currently as a starting quarterback for 2026, and he just lost Mike McDaniel. Jordan Addison is dealing with J.J. McCarthy. We all know the roller coaster that he's put even Justin Jefferson on and the experience that we've had with that. And let me just say that Jordan Addison just got out of jail. That's all I'll say. The only one you can make a good, strongish case for, like I mentioned, is Zay Flowers, but he's never scored over 5 touchdowns in a season. I guess, touchdowns are kind of weird every single year, but he's the only player that I really think is set up to succeed in 2025 the most. And I just talked about the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. I don't think it's the most stable asset in terms of production for 2026. Other than that, though, I see AJ Brown as a clear value. Clear. I want players who give me the best chance to win my dynasty leagues, and he does that. He does it at the best price, too. I don't discriminate with age. I really don't care. I could be crazy, but AJ Brown is going to be one of my biggest buys this offseason. I'm going to try to buy him everywhere, especially if we get a good offensive coordinator that comes in. I think the Eagles are going to get back on track. They seem to have this like every other year thing where they go to the Super Bowl, then they have a weird thing where the coach is going to get fired. They push another offensive coordinator out of the door, and the next year they go to the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl. So I think this past year was a little disappointing, especially for Saquon Barkley, especially for Jalen Hurts, everybody in between. They're going to be looking to bounce back, and AJ Brown is going to be a huge part of that. I don't think they get rid of him. I know that's probably why a lot of people want to buy AJ Brown, because they could trade him, but I think AJ Brown in Philly is a very, very good fantasy asset. I think people are severely underrating the value that he can have in 2026 as a player on your team, especially if you are contending. Well, the next guy we're going to talk about is another player who has lost a ton of shine from just a season ago, Ladd McConkey. This is a painful one, a personal one for me. I could not have been higher after Ladd's rookie season. He was just one of the many 2024 rookie wide receivers who disappointed in their second season, their sophomore season. He was being taken around the second to third round of startup drafts just a year ago. He was ranked around the wide receiver 10 on Keep Your Cut between last January and February. He followed his 15.1 points per game season up with just 11.3 points per game, finished as a wide receiver 37 in points per game. He didn't even eclipse 800 yards after basically having 1,200 yards as a rookie, a very, very steep fall off. He's now fallen all the way to the wide receiver 17 on Keep Their Cut and basically going around the middle of the fifth round in startups as the wide receiver 16. To give some more context here, he is around the likes of Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., and one spot behind Emeka Egbuka. Coincidentally, all these guys were all in the 2024 draft class except for Emeka Egbuka, most of them falling just like Ladd. And here's the thing. I'm going to come around right out and say it. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I think Ladd is a buy. He's a screaming buy. He's an easy buy that I think you can get a lot cheaper than you think. Before we discuss the deals that we could potentially make for Ladd, I want to throw out that in a lot of leagues, I think Ladd is valued a lot lower than what you see on Keep Trade Cut. We have big risers that I don't think I've caught up to him just yet, one of which being Luther Burden. And if you watch the way that he ended the season, especially in the playoffs, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people value him above Ladd McConkey, especially him being in the Bears offense, attached to Caleb Williams. Same thing goes for Jameson Williams. He's going to steam up just based off how he ended the season. And if the Lions hire a good offensive coordinator, which I think they hired Drew Petzing, who was the former offensive coordinator for the Cardinals, I think it's a fine hire. But even if they don't, if that doesn't work out, I think his outlook is favorable because, Dan Campbell took over playing calling duties. He's not scared to do it, even if he, with another play caller this year in 2026, I think he's going to be just fine in that offense. The Lions offense is always good, one of the best in the league. I'm not going to urge you to move off of any of these guys for Ladd. That would be kind of silly at this point. But I would encourage you to move off some of the players for him that I mentioned earlier. Any of Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, I think are fantastic pivots off of Ladd. As much as I love all of these guys, I even like the idea, although much less than the others, of going from Egbuka to Ladd. If an owner sees a big gap between the two, then I think you should make it happen, and I think you can make it happen in some leagues. I just think Ladd has the best setup to succeed for the coming years, and you can really see his ADP bounce back in a big way, especially in 2026 if he bounces back. He's attached to Justin Herbert. He has shown that he can be a top level fantasy option just as a rookie. And the Chargers have a ton of pieces coming back healthy next season that really derail the momentum of their offense in general. This being both of their tackles, Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. Losing Rashawn Slater before the season already didn't help, but losing Joe Alt in week 9 killed the overall passing offense for the Chargers completely. It pretty much directly coincided with Ladd's drop-off in production. After Ladd's slow start through the first 4 games of the season, which I know a lot of people will talk about because is he the wide receiver 3 for the Chargers? After Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen had both hot starts to the year, he went on from weeks 4 to 9 to average 16.8 points per game, basically 17 points per game. After he had a big game in week 10, which I would believe he had like 20 fantasy points, over 100 yards, the game after Joe Alt went down, things just completely went downhill. He was just a 10-point per game scorer from week 11 on. And I know it seems lazy to make an argument that a couple of linemen can make or break a fantasy wide receiver's production, and that's not exactly what I'm saying. The person that really affected, though, was Justin Herbert and his ability to operate the offense. I mean, he's getting hit. He broke his hand in shortly after that as well, and it completely derailed everything for the Chargers. The Chargers were looking really, really good. All those injuries hit, and their passing offense especially went down. They lost to Marion Hampton earlier in the season. Just injuries on top of injuries on top of injuries. And I think in 2026, with all these guys healthy, all these guys back, the Chargers probably adding another lineman in the draft. I think things are looking really, really good. And we heard about their possible hire, and if he doesn't take the head coaching job anywhere else, Mike McDaniel is going to be the offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers offense. I can understand if people want to make the argument that Chargers have too many mouths to feed, and I completely get that. Marion Hampton is obviously really, really good, and we know how much Harbaugh loves to run the ball, but Mike McDaniel coming in, I think that changes things a lot. Quentin Johnson took a big step forward in his 3rd season. Keenan Allen took a good amount of targets away during the season at certain points, but I think he's going to be retired here very soon. Aranda Gadsden emerged as a really, really talented pass-catching tight end. I think he's going to be good, but respectfully, I don't think any of these players really move me off of my stance on Ladd. Other than Marion Hampton, who I believe is incredibly talented, I don't think any of these players really come close to Ladd on a talent level and just, commanding targets in an offense. And none of them have ever come close to his ceiling. Plus, let's just be honest, Hampton does not play wide receiver. He's a running back. So Ladd just has the clearest path And I tend to lean on what I've seen from a player before rather than the mystery of it and potential over everything. And their passing offense in general, I think it's going to completely improve. He had 1,200 yards as a rookie season. I'm going to keep saying that. And I'm going to chalk up a second year due to a multitude of things going completely wrong for the Chargers and their passing offense in general. To add on to this point, Greg Roman, I already mentioned Mike McDaniel's probably going to come in as the offensive coordinator. They fired their offensive coordinator, who was the coordinator for the past 2 seasons. There was clearly change needed. And I think whoever comes in, I hope it's Mike McDaniel, is going to identify that Ladd is the focal point of this offense. He's the best player in this offense, clearly. In situations like this, I'm trusting my eyes. I'm trusting the talent. I'm trusting what I've seen before. Just try not to overthink it and buy low on him wherever you can this offseason. If he's valued lower, just based on all the options in this offense, I think he's a guy you should absolutely go out and get for a discount. His outlook is too good to bounce back, and I am betting big on Lab McConkey going into year 3 in 2026. Let's move over to the running back position. Ashton Jeanty. Some people are probably wondering, how is he a faller? Well, considering where he was going in startups just a year ago, and ranked on Keep Track Cut value-wise at the beginning of the season, I would say he's definitely lost a bit of shine from, when he was first drafted by the Raiders, 6th overall. One thing that bothers me about situations like this that we're talking about, we knew what situation that he was walking into, and we knew he wasn't set up for success for at least this season, most likely. Sure, maybe I was a little bit more bullish than most people should have been on the Raiders, but realistically speaking, I think it was fair to say that, and fair to think that most people thought the most likely outcome for them was they're probably going to be a bottom 10 offensive football and an average one at best. It turned out somehow they were the worst offense in the NFL, besides probably maybe the Browns and the Titans. They were ranked dead last in total yards per game, last in rushing yards per game, fifth in passing yards per game, third worst run blocking grade according to PFF, and fifth worst in pass blocking grade according to PFF. I mean, almost everywhere you look, the Raiders were bottom of the barrel. Atrocious. They were terrible. This caused Jeanty to drop almost 1,000 points from August to September of 2025 to now, according to Keep Track Cut. And he has dropped almost a half a round. I know it's not a ton, but he was going in the first round of startups in a lot of leagues, and now has fallen to the middle of the second, especially a year after going as the 101 in rookie drafts. So now you're probably wondering, what is the argument for buying Ashton Jeanty this offseason? Because absolutely, in my opinion, he is a buy. I could give you the short version of this argument here kind of quick, to be honest. A big part of it involves someone by the name of Fernando Mendoza. If you didn't know, the Raiders were so bad that it was actually going to pay off for them this upcoming season. Their terrible 2025 allows them to draft the Indiana quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner, and national champion Fernando Mendoza. He's almost 1,000% going to be the Raiders pick on draft night. He is currently minus 7,000 to go number 1 overall. The next closest in betting odds is, I believe, plus 5,000, and that is Ruben Bain. For people who have no clue what that means, in simple terms, it's just the closest thing to a sure thing that you can get when looking at betting odds. Fernando Mendoza comes in, and he's going to change everything, in my opinion. We have seen it so many times with rookie quarterbacks, changing the landscape of a team. Let's think about what Jane Daniels did in his rookie season, Bo Nix, CJ Stroud, Jackson Dart this past season, even guys who took massive steps in their second seasons. Caleb Williams won a playoff game, and one mistake away from going to the NFC Championship game and maybe even possibly going to the Super Bowl. Drake May is going to the Super Bowl himself in his second season. I'm not saying Fernando Mendoza is going to walk in and become any of those guys right away. There are always growing pains, and the Raiders still have a lot of holes to address. Offensive line will be a great start. Protecting the franchise quarterback and giving Jeanty room to work on the ground would be completely ideal and would probably be the smartest thing to do. Even with all this, I do think a franchise quarterback and mixed with a new head coach coming in changes a lot and gives Jeanty a much better chance to reach his ceiling sooner rather than later. Speaking of coaching, the Raiders are still in search of their head coach at the moment and have their eyes on an offensive-minded coach after firing Pete Carroll shortly after the season. The names floated around have been like Clint Kubiak, who is the Seahawks offensive coordinator. I think that's the guy who they're going to hire. I think this guy who's going to take the job. He is currently the favorite to land the job. This would be an incredible win for Vegas, and absolutely one you should be excited about, especially for Jeanty's outlook in 2026. I guarantee you that once Mendoza is officially a Raider, and if they nail the head coaching hire, Jeanty will spike in value and make it even harder for you to acquire him. He may have only dropped one spot amongst the running backs in Dynasty in like a half round in startups, and that may not sound like anything crazy, but the 2025 season he had caused a lot of people to be disappointed. He was going in the first round of redraft leagues for most people. He was only a 14 point per game scorer, and for a lot of people that just didn't cut it, and I totally understand. Think about it for a second, though. The rookie running back for possibly the worst offense in the NFL averaged 14 and a half points per game. Sure, he may have been going too high in redraft leagues, but the expectations, especially for me going into 2025, was so unreasonable. Genty was the RB16, and that wasn't probably what you drafted at the 101 for 2025, but like I said, the Raiders offense was not set up for success this past season. Sure, this may have been underwhelming, but let me give you some of the rookie seasons for a couple of the other running backs selected inside the top 10 that are currently riding high in the NFL right this moment. Bijan Robinson, 14 and a half point per game score in year one. Does that sound familiar? He finished as the RB17, a spot behind where Genty would have finished. Christian McCaffrey, the greatest fantasy running back of all time, finished as the RB1 this past year, was only a 14.3 point per game score in his rookie year, and it finished as the RB14. I think he went 8th overall. Bijan went 7th overall. Please, 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 let's not overreact. This value dip, and I'm guilty of it too, could have been spotted from a mile away. We knew the Raiders were going to be good. So let's take advantage right now of his value being low and buy him. So let's float some trade ideas for you and what you can maybe do to try to acquire Genty. Pivot from Genty to Devon Achane. I think you should do it. Achane just lost Mike McDaniel. They just pushed him out as the head coach. Tua looks to be out the door, who peppered him with targets all the time. They have a big hole at the quarterback position. On top of that, the Dolphins hired a defensive-minded head coach in Jeff Hafley from the Packers just a couple of days ago. Can you use a Jonathan Taylor or Travion Henderson and get up into the Genty tier? I think it's absolutely possible. If you have an asset or two to swing and get that done, do it for sure. I would for sure make that happen right away before the gap widens and they draft Mendoza. If they make a good offensive coordinator or a good head coach hire like Clint Kubiak from the Seahawks, he's going to go up pretty dramatically. Can you go cross positionally if you have a luxury of more than two quarterbacks? Can you trade Justin Herbert for Ashton Genty? If you feel comfortable at quarterback, like I say, can you afford to do it? What about adding a small piece to Ted McMillan? The situation in Carolina isn't the most stable, and we know Bryce Young has his up and down. So yes, if I can add a small piece to Ted McMillan and go to Genty, that's a huge win for me. I love all these moves, and I want to get these deals done as soon as possible. His value can really take off soon, and almost certainly will once people start paying attention more to what's going on in the offseason, all these head coaching hires, who is likely to be the number one pick. Because believe it or not, I don't think a lot of people understand and a lot of people realize that, yes, the Raiders are going to get their franchise quarterback at the first pick this year, and he's going to change this offense and Genty's value completely. All right, so that is going to be it for today. Let me know if you're buying or selling any of these players, or if I missed someone who would have been a great add to this video. As always, I seriously appreciate anyone who stayed to watch. Happy off season, and I will see you guys next time.